Most of the time, we experience life linearly. We can look back over the course of our lives and connect the dots on many of the events that happened to us. And we can think forward into the future and project where we might be in a week, or a month, or a year. While you're probably a very different person today than you were a long time ago, there's still this continuous sense of I that extends in a mostly unbroken line into the past. But sometimes something strange happens, and the connection between those dots gets cut. This can include everything from pretty normal experiences where you might zone out in a car and you blink, and you realize that you don't remember the last 15 minutes while you've been driving. Then there are maybe more intense experiences, where we have gaps in our memory related to difficult times in our lives, or we feel like we're seeing things as they're happening to us, but we're not really feeling anything at all. This is known as dissociation, and it happens when the senses that create our continuous experience of the world break down. It's a really common experience, and it can be helpful to understand what it is and where it comes from. Dissociation is defined as a lack of connection between processes that are usually associated with each other. When our experiences are dissociated, they aren't integrated into our usual sense of self, which can create gaps in our experience. These gaps can take many different forms. One example might be thinking of a past event that was tremendously upsetting to you at the time, and having no emotional experience of it in the present day. This emotional numbing is actually one of the hallmarks of post-traumatic stress disorder, and is a common form of dissociation. Others might include gaps in your memory, having strong emotions come out of nowhere, or even feeling like some other person is controlling your body or behavior. When we hear a really clinical term like dissociation, it's tempting to think it describes some kind of overwhelming experience, or that if we experience something like it, there's something really messed up with us. But most people experience dissociation every day without even being aware of it, and most of the time it's not a very big deal. We can think about dissociation as having 3 levels. First, there are pretty mild experiences, like the ones I was describing in the car, where you blink and you realize that you can't remember the last 10 minutes of your drive. Or you realize that your conversational partner is now looking at you expectantly and you have no idea what they just said. Then second, there are moderate, normal range experiences that might include feeling kind of numb after you have an intense emotional conversation with somebody else, or even when you know that you're about to have one. Then spending a little bit more time here in the normal range, feelings of sleepiness are a common form of dissociation. If you find yourself suddenly yawning or even starting to nod off during a challenging conversation, in therapy, or hey, maybe even when watching one of my videos or listening to an episode of my podcast, it could be because you're moving into dissociation because what's being talked about is really uncomfortable for you. Now, it could also be because you had a long day and you didn't sleep much last night and you're cutting back on caffeine. So it's good to be a bit thoughtful about over-inferring. Interestingly, sleep disturbances, including nightmares, vivid dreaming, and narcolepsy, are often linked to dissociative symptoms during the daytime. And there's some research that suggests that both of these sets of symptoms result from problems with sleep and wake state boundaries. In other words, the line between sleeping and waking gets really fuzzy for people, which might occur as the result of intense stress or even trauma. Finally, we have third, clinically significant pathology, including dissociative disorders, like dissociative identity disorder, which is what people used to call multiple personality disorder, depersonalization derealization disorder, and dissociative amnesia. It's important to emphasize that dissociation is an issue when you feel like it's disrupting your ability to function effectively out in the world, interrupting your ability to grow and express yourself in the manner you'd like to, or harming your relationships in some meaningful way. If that's not happening, don't worry about it. There's a lot I don't love about the DSM, which is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. It's basically psychology's messed up holy book. But one of the things that I do really appreciate about it is that under most every set of diagnostic criteria, you'll see a phrase like symptoms interfere with or reduce the quality of social, school, or work functioning, which is basically an elaborate way of saying only worry about this if it's messing your life up, or the lives of people you care about. The most important thing to know about dissociation is that it's a coping response. It's a behavior that we perform in response to stress. It's one of the body and the mind's ways of protecting itself against very painful experiences. We're typically activated into coping responses either when we're in a very stressful situation or when we believe a situation could become stressful in the future. And our experience of a situation as either stressful in the moment or plausibly stressful in the future is dictated almost entirely by our personal history. If a person has a history of negative experiences in a certain kind of environment or with a certain kind of person, they're more likely to appraise similar experiences as stressful in the future. This means that all situations aren't equal for all people. What might be appraised as completely safe by one person could be borderline traumatic for another. And to me, this is just such a reminder to have empathy both for our own experience and for the experiences of other people. Just because something's easy for you doesn't mean it's going to be easy for somebody else. And just because it's not easy for somebody else doesn't mean that there's something profoundly wrong with them. They might have just had a more challenging life history than you did. I hope this helped give you a better understanding of dissociation and gives some ideas of why you might feel yourself psychologically separating from experiences that other people can get through without issue. It's usually not because you're weak or overly sensitive. It's just because we have different challenges based on our personal history. Before I wrap up this video, I want to spend a moment talking about mindfulness practices and dissociation. Mindfulness is essentially the opposite of dissociation, right? It helps people kind of cultivate the ability to stay in the present moment, while dissociation removes us entirely from our current experience. So it could naturally be really tempting to view mindfulness or mindfulness practices like meditation as this perfect antidote to dissociation. And some researchers have suggested that mindfulness is uniquely suited as a treatment for dissociation. But there are a lot of difficulties here as well. You gotta remember that dissociation is widely believed to be a protective response to trauma. It's something that shields our conscious awareness from suffering, which prevents us from being overwhelmed. And we have defenses for reasons. Mindfulness practice often includes 3 features that can be at least uncomfortable or even kind of dangerous for people who dissociate due to a trauma history. First, it includes an experience of passive witnessing, where your top-down cognitive control is relaxed. Second, it includes a deliberate focus on the wholeness of one's experience, including questions like, what's really there, or who am I actually? And then there can be this quality of opening the door to our depths, perhaps even including some levels of awareness of our unconscious. And while for many people these qualities lead to an experience of calm and peace and even some pretty wild self-transcendent experiences of awe and wonder and other states as well, for a lot of people, there's really painful material on the other side of that door, and just blowing ourselves open to being mindfully present with all aspects of our experience isn't always a great idea for everybody. To be clear, I'm not saying this to bag on mindfulness practice. If you've checked out my content in the past, including the podcast that I host, which is called Being Well, you probably already know that I think mindfulness practices are amazing and that they've had a hugely positive impact on my life personally. But there are people out there who hold up mindfulness as this kind of all-in-one solution for every problem, and it's just not that. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please remember to hit the subscribe button and the like button. It really helps me out with the old algorithm, and I do appreciate it. Also, if you like these videos, you'll love the podcast. There are new episodes every week, and you can subscribe through the link I've included below. Until next time, thanks for watching.